Domenico Ghirlandaio was an Italian Renaissance painter from Florence. Ghirlandaio was part of the so-called third generation of the Florentine Renaissance, along with Verrocchio, the Poliolo brothers and Sandro Botticelli. Ghirlandaio was the leader of a large and efficient workshop which included his brothers Davide Ghirlandaio and Benedetto Ghirlandaio, his brother-in-law Sebastiano Mainardi from San Gimignano, and later his son Rodolfo Ghirlandaio. Among the many apprentices that passed through his workshop, the most famous was Michelangelo. Ghirlandaio's particular talent was his ability to depict contemporary life in portraits of contemporary people within the context of religious narratives. This brought him great popularity in many large commissions. Life and works. Early years. Ghirlandaio was born Domenico di Tommaso di Currado Bigordi, the son of Tommaso Bigordi by his first wife Antonia di Ser Paoli. He was the eldest of 6 children born to Tommaso Bigordi by his first wife Antonia di Ser Paoli. Of these, only Domenico and his brothers and collaborators Davide and Benedetto Ghirlandaio survived childhood. Tommaso had 2 more children by his second wife, also named Antonia, whom he married in 1464. Domenico's half-sister Alessandra married the painter Bastiano Mainardi in 1494. The occupation of his father Tommaso Bigordi and his uncle Antonio in 1451 was setteruolo a minuto, that is, a dealer of silks and related objects in small quantities. Giorgio Vasari reported that Domenico was at first apprenticed to his father, who was a goldsmith. The nickname Il Ghirlandaio came to Domenico from his father, who was famed for creating the metallic garland-like headdresses worn by Florentine women. According to Vasari, Domenico made portraits of the passers-by and visitors to the shop. When he painted the country people or anyone who passed through his studio, he immediately captured their likeness. He was eventually apprenticed to Alessio Baldovanetti to study painting and mosaic. According to the art historian Gunto Passavent, he was apprenticed in Florence to Andrea del Verrocchio. He maintained a close association with other Florentine painters including Botticelli and with the Umbrian painter Perugino. First works in Florence, Rome and Tuscany. Ghirlandaio excelled in the painting of frescoes, and it is for his fresco cycles that he is best known. An early commission came to him in the 1470s from the commune of San Gimignano to decorate the chapel of Santa Fina in the collegiate church of that city. The frescoes, executed from 1477 to 78, depict 2 miraculous events associated with the death of Saint Fina. In 1480, Ghirlandaio painted St. Jerome in his study as a companion piece to Saint Augustine in his study by Botticelli in the Church of Ognissanti, Florence. He also painted a life-size Last Supper in its refectory. From 1481 to 1485, he was employed on frescoes at the Palazzo Vecchio, painting among other works an apotheosis of Saint Zenobius in the Sala del Giglio, an over-life-sized work with an elaborate architectural framework, figures of Roman heroes, and other secular details, striking in its perspective and compositional skill. In 1483, Ghirlandaio was summoned to Rome by Pope Sixtus IV as one of a team of Florentine and Umbrian painters who he commissioned to create a series of frescoes of the lives of Jesus and Moses around the walls of the Sistine Chapel. Ghirlandaio painted the vocation of the apostles. He also painted the now-lost resurrection of Christ. The crossing of the Red Sea has also been attributed to him, but is consistent with the style of Cosimo Rosselli, who was also part of the commission. Ghirlandaio is known to have created other works in Rome, now lost. His future brother-in-law, Sebastiano Mainardi, assisted him with these commissions, and in the early frescoes at San Gimignano, where Mainardi is now thought to have painted an Annunciation, sometimes attributed to Ghirlandaio. In 1484, an agent of Ludovico il Moro wrote to his lord, describing the works of the individual artists whose works he had seen in Florence. Domenico Ghirlandaio is a good painter on panel and better in mural fresco. His style is very good. He is active and very creative. Later works. In Tuscany in 1485, Ghirlandaio was commissioned to paint a fresco cycle in the Sassati chapel of Santa Trinita for the donor and banker Francesco Sassati, the powerful manager of the branch of the Medici Bank in Genoa, a position later filled by Giovanni Tornabuoni, Ghirlandaio's future patron. The cycle was of 6 scenes from the life of Saint Francis of Assisi, including Saint Francis obtaining from Pope Honorius the approval of the rules of his order, the saint's death and obsequies, and a resuscitation of a child of the Spini family, who had died as a result of a fall from a window. The first of these paintings contains portraits of Lorenzo de' Medici, Sassati and Lorenzo's children with their tutor, Agnolo Poliziano. The resuscitation shows the painter's own likeness. In 1485, there arrived in Florence a masterpiece of the Flemish painter Hugo van der Goes, now known as the Portinari altarpiece. It was an Adoration of the Shepherds, commissioned by Tommaso Portinari, an employee of the Medici Bank. The painting was in oil paint, not the tempera employed in Florence, and demonstrated the flexibility of that medium in the painting of textures and intensity of light and shade. The aspect of the painting that had a profound effect on Ghirlandaio was the naturalism with which the shepherds were depicted. Ghirlandaio painted the altarpiece of the Sassati Chapel, an Adoration of the Shepherds. It is in this painting that he particularly shows his indebtedness to the Portinari altarpiece. The shepherds, among whom is portrait of the artist himself, are portrayed with a realism that was an advance in Florentine painting at that time. The altarpiece is still in position in Santa Trinita, surrounded by the frescoes of which it was the centerpiece. On either side are portraits of the kneeling donors, and although the figures are in fresco on the wall, they occupy the same position and relationship to the central scene of the adoration that the donors do on the outer panels of the Portinari altarpiece. Immediately after the commission for the Sassati Chapel, Ghirlandaio was asked to renew the frescoes in the choir of the Santa Maria Novella, which formed the chapel of the Ricci family. The Tornabuoni and Tornaquince families, who were much more prominent than the Ricci, undertook the cost of the restoration, with certain contractual conditions. The Tornabuoni chapel frescoes were painted in 4 courses around the 3 walls, the subjects being the lives of the Virgin Mary and Saint John the Baptist. In this cycle, there are no fewer than 21 portraits of the Tornabuoni and Tornaquince families. In The Angel Appearing to Zacharias, there are portraits of members of the Medici Academy, Agnolo Poliziano, Marsilio Ficino and others. The Tornabuoni chapel was completed in 1490 with the altarpiece probably executed with the assistance of Domenico's brothers, Davide and Benedetto, and a stained glass window to Ghirlandaio's own design. Although mainly known for his fresco cycles, Ghirlandaio painted a number of altarpieces including the Virgin adored by Saints Zenobius, Justice and others, painted for the Church of St. Justice, now in the Uffizi Gallery, and the Adoration of the Magi in the Florentine Orphanage. The Ospedale degli Innocenti, in which he included a portrait of himself. Other panel paintings include Christ in Glory with Romuald and other saints, in the Badia of Volterra, and the Visitation, now in the Louvre, which bears the last ascertained date of all his works. Ghirlandaio painted a number of panel portraits of known identities, such as his profile portrait of Giovanni Tornabuoni, commissioned in 1488. Perhaps his best known is the portrait of an old man and his grandson, remarkable for both the tenderness of expression and the realism with which the disfigured nose of the old man is depicted. According to Vasari, Ghirlandaio also painted several scenes of classical subjects with nude figures, including a Vulcan and his assistants forging thunderbolts for Lorenzo II de' Medici, but which no longer exists. He also produced designs for a number of mosaics, including the Annunciation on a portal of the Florence Cathedral. Death: Ghirlandaio died in 1494 of pestilential fever, and was buried in Santa Maria Novella. The day and month of his birth remain undocumented, but he is recorded as having died in early January of his 45th year. He had been twice married and left 6 children. One of his 3 sons, Rodolfo Ghirlandaio, also became a painter. Although he had a long line of descendants, the family died out in the 17th century, when its last members entered monasteries. Critical assessment and legacy. Ghirlandaio worked mainly in fresco, with a number of the important works being executed in tempera. Vasari states that Ghirlandaio was the first to abandon, in great part, the use of gilding in his pictures, representing by painting any objects that were made of gold. This is not applicable to his entire oeuvre, as details in some paintings. For example, the altarpiece of the Adoration of the Shepherds were rendered in gold leaf. According to William Michael Rossetti, Ghirlandaio's compositional schema were simultaneously grand and decorous, in keeping with 15th century's restrained and classicizing experimentation. His chiaroscuro, in the sense of realistic shading and three-dimensionalism, was reasonably advanced, as were his perspectives. According to Vasari, his sense of perspective was so acute that he made drawings of ancient Roman monuments such the Colosseum, in which he worked entirely by eye, and which when later measured, proved to have mathematically accurate proportion and linear perspective. Ghirlandaio is credited as the teacher of Michelangelo. Francesco Granacci is another among his pupils. According to Vasari, these two were sent by Ghirlandaio to the Medici Academy, when Lorenzo de' Medici requested his 2 best pupils. Although Michelangelo regarded himself primarily as a sculptor, in the 16th century he was to follow his master as a painter of frescoes. At the Sistine Chapel, Ghirlandaio was highly praised by Vasari. Ghirlandaio, who, from his talent and from the greatness and the vast number of his works, may be called one of the most important and most excellent masters of the age. In the 19th century, Jacob Burckhardt and others praised him for his compositions, for his technical ability, and for the lifelike quality of his figures, seen by Archibald Joseph Crowe and Giovanni Battista Cavalcasole as being as innovative as those of Giotto had been. By the early 19th century the appreciation of his work had waned, and it was not until 1994, the 500th anniversary of the artist's death, that interest in him was rekindled. At this time a symposium was held and subsequently in-depth monographs on the artist were published. Rosenauer comments on the usefulness of Ghirlandaio's paintings as pictorial records for the historian. Works by Ghirlandaio. Portraits, altarpieces, frescoes, details, bibliography. Jean K. Cadogan, Domenico Ghirlandaio. Artist and Artisan, Yale University Press, ISBN 9780300087208. André Chastel, Art of the Italian Renaissance, Alpine Fine Arts Collection Limited, ISBN 0-88168-139-3. John T. Paoletti and Gary M. Radke, Art in Renaissance Italy, Lawrence King Publishing, 3rd edition, ISBN 9781856694391. Artur Rosenauer, Review of Domenico Ghirlandaio. Artist and Artisan by Jean K. Cadogan, mutualart.com. Giorgia Vasari, Lives of the Painters. painters Domenico Ghirlandaio,